A mother's decision, having 7 children against her wishes. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. I learned the sound of courage by counting the tiles in the clinic hallway. Joel's hand hovered at my elbow like a public prop, soft enough to look gentle, firm enough to direct. He told the nurse, "We're grateful, Mara's fine," as if my voice were decorative. I was pregnant again, 7th time. The word itself heavy, a bell that wouldn't stop ringing inside my chest. I wanted quiet. I wanted choice. I wanted an ordinary morning without eyes on us and forms placed under my pen. The contraception discussion I'd asked for last month had been declined in my chart, an unfamiliar decision made in my name. I stared at the screen as if I could retype my life. Dr. Patel appeared at the doorway with the calm of someone who understands storms. "We're monitoring a few things," she said carefully, and it sounded like a gift. Truth in a place that smelled like antiseptic and denial. Joel squeezed my arm and smiled, the kind of smile people use for church directories. "We trust God's plan," he told the doctor. "We trust Mara's body," Dr. Patel replied, meeting my eyes like a lifeline tossed across open water. "I have loved my children the way a person loves air after surfacing, with gratitude and relief and shaking hands. Loving them never meant wanting to drown." For years I recited Joel's script because it made the neighbors clap, and it made Ruth bring pies to my front step. I learned which words pleased which people. Blessed, fruitful, humble. I learned how to fold laundry like a shield. I learned where to hide the part of me that still remembered finishing college applications with ink-stained fingers and drawing little stars next to deadlines. The nurse slid a clipboard toward me for routine signatures. My name sat above a tidy checkmark declining additional counseling, declining contraception, declining referrals. The handwriting looked like mine except for the R in Mara, looped the way Joel looped his. He had beautiful penmanship, I used to tell him that. Dr. Patel glanced at the signature line, paused, and looked at me. "I never signed that," I said quietly. Joel's smile flattened as the nurse reached for the consent file. The first time Joel said I was born for motherhood, he said it like a compliment, the way people praise a sunset as if it practiced for them. We were young then, our worries small, and our plans enormous. He drove me to the edge of town to see a half-renovated farmhouse and told me he could already hear children against the walls like music. I wanted a library card and a quiet office and 2 kids, maybe 3. I wanted weekends where we got bored and took long walks. He wanted purpose you could multiply. The first 2 babies came with love and ordinary chaos. I stacked board books and sang in the kitchen and wrote grocery lists on backs of envelopes. I worked part-time at the library, alphabetized returns, helped an elderly man print an email to his granddaughter, and felt like myself, useful and small in a good way. Joel told everyone that my little job was cute. I laughed because laughing was easier than explaining the holiness of ordinary work. After Ivy, the words changed. "Duty," he said, brushing hair from my forehead, "is heavier than happiness, and that's how you know it's holy." I laughed the first time, then stopped laughing because my laughter didn't fit the room anymore. When I tried to bring up work or graduate school, he kissed my palm and said, "Later. We'll be blessed with later." Ruth brought casseroles and books about biblical womanhood and told me stories of women who regretted wanting anything except babies. A month before the 3rd baby, Joel made a joke at small group. "Mothers don't need choices, just faith." Everyone laughed the way people laugh when they don't want the room to change temperature. He squeezed my shoulder for the punchline. I smiled because the joke had already chosen its audience, and it wasn't me. The joke sharpened into policy. I came home from the library one day to find our budget reorganized into envelopes labeled groceries, gas, giving, and faith. "This will give us discipline," Joel said, tapping the faith envelope as if money could bruise. He took over the bank passwords so I wouldn't have to worry. I said, "Thank you," because in our town we say thank you, even to fences. At supper I asked, "What if we space things out?" "I'm tired, Joel." He smiled at Ruth, not me. "Tired is the enemy's whisper," he said, and the room agreed by staying silent. I searched my phone that night and found the period tracking app removed. I re-downloaded it, entered dates, set reminders. In the morning, the icon was back in the same place it had always been, as if I had imagined the erasure, except for one detail. It already had my data. My stomach fell through the floor. What would you risk? I asked the ceiling in the dark. To reclaim your own body. A week later, a church lady touched my shoulder and whispered, "Some of us are just chosen for more." The app pinged again from Joel's phone, and my breath stuttered. Red flags rarely look red in our town. They look like baked chicken left on your porch and a voicemail that starts with prayer. Joel loved the word optimize because it made control sound like a TED Talk. Groceries became cash envelopes, counted theatrically at the table, a magician proving he had nothing up his sleeve while making everything disappear into his pocket. The church family committee called to check on my mood, as if interior weather could be audited. Their prayers came with questions I recognized from gentle interrogations. Are you sleeping? Are you resisting doubt? Do you trust your husband's leadership? I told myself I was being ungrateful. I listed blessings aloud while I folded pajamas. Kids sleeping in a tangle, a car that started, clean water from the tap, a roof that didn't leak. Gratitude is holy. It also mutes alarms when you use it like earbuds. I tried to be small inside my life, so my life would stop pressing back. That evening, my phone lit with a pharmacy text, a gentle tone that used to mean autonomy and now meant surveillance. I watched the notification mirror onto Joel's screen across the room. The same tone, the same preview of my name, as if my body reported to him first. He looked down, then up, and smiled. Spam, he said again, like a lullaby. The next day, the committee dropped off a binder labeled Support Resources, a cheerful pastel manual that read like a budget disguised as a hug. Pages flagged, Managing Doubt, Guarding Your Marriage, When Friends Lead You Astray. Inside the pocket was a business card for the pastor's wife, her handwriting looping around a time for counseling. I tucked it under a stack of school flyers and felt something inside me stand up straight. At bedtime, Ivy came to my room, sat on the rug, and asked a square, adult question. Mom, do you want another baby? The room turned into a balance beam. I don't know how to answer that without lying, I said finally. But I want you safe. She nodded, a grown-up nod, and handed me a drawing of a lighthouse with our kitchen window as a lantern. We sat there, two people in a house pretending to be a ship. I set my phone to airplane mode and slept with it under my pillow like a passport. In the morning, the period app had moved into a folder Joel curated and named Family Health. I opened it, and a new cycle had already been logged for me. It was small things, then not small. Ruth arrived unannounced with a laundry basket of baby clothes and a sermon from the doorstep. Birth control is a fear word, she said, smiling so kindly it felt like a trap. She told me about a neighbor who regretted interfering with God and cried into my dish towel about a grandchild I hadn't even considered. The pastor's wife, Elaine, invited me to tea, which turned out to be a gentle deposition. Submission is safety, she said, stirring honey into her mug, and safety is love. Her kitchen smelled like lemon oil and rules. I nodded and asked for the date of the next women's group because I had learned to speak fluent diplomacy. At the clinic for a routine check, under the same humming lights and the same faded poster about prenatal vitamins, a form was waiting with my name already printed in block letters. The boxes for declines contraception counseling and no referral requested were checked with neat, careful loops that matched every grocery list Joel had ever written. I felt heat creep up my neck. The nurse's tone stayed neutral, but her eyes didn't. Take your time, she said, and it sounded like she meant, take your life back. I traced the R in my first name with the tip of the pen, looped and tall like Joel's particular way of claiming letters, and my hand refused to move. I need to review this, I said. Dr. Patel stepped in with a patience that steadied me from the ankles up. Do you want me here? Dr. Patel asked, soft enough that the question could hide in the beeps and murmurs of the hallway. Yes, I said, and the word surprised me by sounding like a start line. When the appointment ended, Joel told Dr. Patel, we appreciate your caution. She replied, we prioritize consent. He laughed as if that were a punchline. On the way out, Ruth squeezed my shoulder and whispered, don't make trouble. It's unseemly in mothers. I said nothing, because sometimes silence is a match you haven't struck yet. I drove the long way home, counting mailboxes while the kids argued about birds. In the rear view, Ivy mouthed, you okay? I nodded because nodding is the currency of mothers. At a red light, I opened the patient portal and took screenshots. Consent, declined. Referral, declined. Counseling, declined. Each decline felt like a finger pressing my mouth closed. I updated my phone passcode and woke to find it changed back by morning. Friendships can disappear without anyone admitting they chose the exit. After a string of just checking in calls from church ladies, 3 of my closest friends stopped inviting me to meetups at the park. One texted that I seemed negative lately. Another asked if Joel knew I was struggling with obedience. It is cruel how the word obedience can be dressed up as care. At school pickup, a teacher I barely knew clasped my arm and said, "Praying for a peaceful spirit." I went home and scrubbed the sink until it shone like a stage. Joel came in, kissed the top of my head, and told me Ruth had spoken with Elaine about support structures. The phrase sounded like scaffolding erected around a house someone planned to repaint while you slept. Ivy began to shadow me, not clingy, just near, drying dishes next to me, sitting on the back steps while I sorted laundry, bringing me her homework to check even when it was flawless. "I can help," she'd say, and what I heard was, "I can see you drowning." One night, she placed a folded index card on my pillow. On it, she had written the kids' shoe sizes and the dates of their school events. And on the back, a single sentence, "Tell me what you need. Tell me what you need." I repeated, and the words buoyed me for an hour like driftwood you can't climb on. The night the house was too quiet, I found Ruth in the driveway talking into her phone, telling someone that I was emotional lately, and that Joel was carrying a lot. When she saw me, she smiled like a sweet old photograph. "Just giving updates," she chirped. I wanted to ask who had requested updates on my soul. In the kitchen, Ivy dried her hands and looked up at me. "Mom," she asked, steady as a lighthouse, "are babies still your choice?" The room waited with her. I looked at the ceiling and told the truth to the paint first. I started a small notebook titled Evidence with sticky notes for dates, names, and the phrases people used when they meant control. I wrote, "Elaine, submission is safety. Ruth, unseemly in mothers. Joel, later." I wrote, "Pharmacy text mirrored on Joel's phone. Period app moved to family health. Budget envelopes counted like a show." I tucked the notebook under the flour canister. A floorboard creaked as Joel stepped in, smiling too brightly to breathe. The next clues arrived like mail I hadn't known the post office delivered. On Tuesday, the pharmacy reminder pinged again, but from the kitchen counter where Joel's phone lay beneath yesterday's grocery envelope. The preview flashed my name and the word refill like a small siren. Joel flipped the phone face down and said, "Spam," with a shrug practiced enough to be choreography. That night, after the kids slept, I opened our shared Apple ID. My devices sat nested under Joel's account like birds in a cage. Calendar events duplicated themselves without my touch. A setting I didn't recognize allowed family organizers to manage health data. I clicked it off. 10 minutes later, it toggled on again as if a ghost respected Joel's schedule. On the bank site, I traced transfers to a family foundation Joel had registered last year at a P.O. box near the feed store. Donations left our account in tidy increments. $80, $120, $300. Numbers too small to cause alarm, frequent enough to make a shape. The day I canceled an IUD consult, $500 moved into the foundation. The memo read benevolence. My stomach arced like a roller coaster that never ended. I printed statements at the library using cash and fed the pages into my evidence notebook like it was hungry. I took photos of the patient portal with dates beside each declined and no referral requested. My handwriting precise, my hands not shaking because anger can be steadier than fear. At breakfast, Joel kissed my hair and said, "The committee wants to help more. People are concerned." His tone made concern sound like deputized. "We're fine," I said. Ivy watched his face and then mine, collecting data like a scientist who loved her subjects too much to be careless. After drop-off, I sat in the car outside the clinic and called Dr. Patel's office. "I have questions about my chart," I said. The receptionist's voice was kind in the way you learn to recognize as trained and real. She scheduled me for Thursday, and my hands finally trembled. In the rearview mirror, Ruth's sedan idled, 2 houses down, watching. The county clerk's office smelled like old paper and floor cleaner. The scent of stories kept obedient. I requested copies of any documents on file with my name, any consent forms, any amendments. The clerk, A woman with a cardigan the color of sage asked for ID and slid me a request form. I wrote slowly to keep my hands from shaking. The hum of the copiers sounded like rain. In an interview room, I unfolded documents one by one. The signature that claimed to be mine had my slanted M and the little tail on the final A, but the R rose taller than I ever draw it. Joel's flourish. Dates set suspiciously close to Sundays, as if holiness could be notarized. One consent form listed a witness I had never met. Beneath, patient declines further counseling, was a note. Seen with husband present. Dr. Patel met me during her lunch break, setting her salad aside to review what I could show her without violating laws. I can't speak to everything, she said, but I can tell you what good documentation should look like. She pointed with a capped pen. Here, the timestamp is odd. Here, the language is identical across visits. That's unusual. Here, the initials look pasted. She circled nothing, yet somehow circled everything. I need to keep my children safe, I said. She nodded like she'd trained for that line. Loop in a school counselor, she said. Document. Share copies, not originals. And if anyone interferes with your communications, let us know. Her calm was not theatrical. It was the kind of calm people earn. I walked out with a patient advocate's card, a list of hotlines, and the strange relief of a plan you didn't want but finally had. I sat in the driver's seat and let the air conditioning roar until the sweat cooled on my neck. I took a photo of the note under my wiper, slid it into a Ziploc, and pressed it flat between notebook pages. I called the school and asked for the counselor, explaining that my daughter might need to talk to someone. The receptionist placed me on a brief hold and returned with a time for Thursday afternoon, the same day as my clinic appointment. The symmetry felt like a door. A shadow moved in the clerk's window as I dialed the counselor. The what arrived before the why. The mechanism was tidy, almost boring in its efficiency. Refills picked up, then never brought home. Patient portal messages routed to a shared inbox. Joel managed to simplify things. Consent boxes pre-checked on forms I only saw when my hands were busy with a crying child. The foundation's ledger listed gifts to families in crisis, but the addresses matched our friends who chaired committees and hosted potlucks. Money went in, praise flowed out, and our account paid for the applause. On Joel's laptop, which he left open after falling asleep on the couch, a folder named Home Care contained scans of forms with my name in block print. I clicked one and saw my signature cut and pasted, a near-perfect clone with the R standing too tall. A second file included a draft email from Joel to Elaine about keeping Mara aligned, a phrase that stuck to my teeth like chalk. I printed screenshots at the library, paid in coins, and almost cried when the copier jammed because the sound of paper crumpling felt indecently intimate. I fed the jam back through and collected everything with the care of someone saving a life 1 inch at a time. I labeled each page by date and source, wrote down who was in the room, and noted the smell of coffee or bleach or fear. I took it all to Dr. Patel's office and sat with the patient advocate. We can't give legal advice, she said, but we can help you document and connect you to resources. She slid a pamphlet across the table and tapped a section about interfering with communications. Is there a name for this? I asked. There are several, she said, but we can start with, not okay. By the time I left, the sky had decided to rain. I drove slowly through town, past the feed store and the mural with the heron that everyone photographs in spring. Rain silvered the road. Wipers kept time like a metronome set to patience. I parked 2 blocks from the house so I could think for 60 more seconds. The notebook felt heavier than paper. I pictured Ivy's lighthouse drawing and let the imagined beams sweep across our porch, across Ruth's car, across the mailbox with our last name in flaking paint. I breathed in and counted to 5 and didn't feel better, but felt ready. Behind me, Joel's key turned in the front door at noon. I laid the notebook open on the kitchen table after noon, every page flagged like a field of small brave colors. Joel's footsteps crossed the hall. I closed it, slid it under the placemats, and turned the burner on as camouflage. Soup? I asked, voice steady like a ruler. He kissed my hair and checked his phone. I watched the reflected glow move over the window like a patrol. When he left for a meeting, I moved. Copies, not originals. Photos, not hopes. I exported patient portal PDFs to a fresh email I'd created at the library, an address with no family name, no breadcrumb to our porch. I labeled files with dates and rooms. Kitchen, Joel phone refill. Clinic, declined boxes. Library, foundation ledger. I wrote a summary in plain words older women would trust. These items show decisions recorded without my consent and money routed to polish an image. I called the school and confirmed Ivy's counselor time, then asked whether there was a family advocate trained in coercive control. Yes, the receptionist said, voice warm but not surprised. You're not the first. The sentence landed like a quilt. At Dr. Patel's, the patient advocate reviewed my checklist: secure device, separate email, code word with a friend, safe place for kids. I texted my neighbor Claire, neutral, sensible, not church-bound, and wrote, if I say I need your lemon pie recipe, please come. She replied with a heart, and I'll bring real pie, too. The ledger bothered me most. Donations in, praises out, my body the billboard. I printed the state's charity registry page showing our foundation, listed as pending compliance, and clipped it beside the memo benevolence. I added a photo of Joel's draft to Elaine, keeping Mara aligned, and another of Ruth's note about my mood. Then I packed a go bag: birth certificates, insurance cards, a family photo Ivy loved, a Ziploc of cash scraped from the grocery envelope. I stashed it behind the winter coats. I placed a copy of everything at Claire's, hugged her at the door, and didn't explain because some mercies are better without narration. On the drive home, I rehearsed 2 scripts. One where I confronted Joel tonight, and one where I smiled through dinner, waited for Thursday, and let documentation speak when I finally could. The second script tasted like patience. The first tasted like fire. I chose patience because fire likes houses. At bedtime, Ivy whispered, "We're okay." I said, "We have a plan," and meant it for the first time since our mailbox learned our name. In the dark, my phone vibrated with a calendar invite titled Family Prayer Night. They arrived with casseroles and smiles, the kind that shine like badges. Elaine carried a notebook. Ruth carried a pie and the authority of grandmothers. Joel set a circle of chairs like a stage manager, then rested his hand between my shoulder blades as if to anchor or direct me. "We're grateful you're here," he said, the phrase that always precedes a verdict. Ivy hovered in the doorway until I nodded toward the stairs. She retreated but stayed within hearing, the way deer pause at the treeling. Joel opened with prayer about unity and fear. Then Elaine took the floor, voice soft as velvet rope. "We've sensed Mara's struggling with trust," she said, scanning faces for agreement. Heads bent, pens readied. Ruth leaned forward. "Sweetheart, repentance is a door," she said, "and doors keep families safe." The room hummed with approval that felt like bees. I inhaled and pictured Dr. Patel's steady eyes. "I'm committed to safety," I said, "and safety includes consent." The word landed like a plate dropped in church. Elaine smiled as if I were a bright student. "Sometimes consent is confused by worldly voices," she said. Joel squeezed my shoulder, warning, plea, claim. "We'll get counseling," he offered. With Elaine, of course. I thought of her kitchen that smelled like rules. I kept my voice level. "A licensed counselor," I said. Outside the church. A murmur rolled, low thunder. Ruth's smile thinned. "We don't air laundry to strangers," she said. "Only wolves asked to shear the flock." Joel pivoted to money, his safer ground. "The foundation is thriving," he said. "We're helping families." I watched Elaine's pen move. "How wonderful," she breathed. I pictured the pending compliance screenshot waiting in my folder. Questions began, gentle at first, then pointed. "Are you sleeping? Have you been tempted by feminist blogs? Do you understand your husband's burden?" I answered with small truths that didn't endanger Thursday. "I'm tired," I said. "I care about our children. I want decisions with my name to be mine." Elaine closed her notebook. "Let's seal this with prayer," she said, which meant the conversation ended where it began. People hugged me like a benediction they controlled. At the door, Ruth whispered, "Don't humiliate your family in public." After the last car left, Joel turned off the porch light and stood between me and the stairs. "Are you trying to embarrass me?" he asked, voice low enough for the walls. I met his eyes and kept my hands loose at my sides the way Dr. Patel had taught me to stand when scared. "I'm trying not to disappear," I said. He smiled without teeth. "Then act like a wife," he said. Upstairs, Ivy's door creaked. She slipped into the hall and squeezed my fingers once, a code that meant still here. I exhaled, slow, and counted 3. Downstairs, Joel's phone lit the room, blue as a siren, as another calendar invite appeared for Thursday morning. The county records office smelled of toner and patience. I'd rehearsed this moment for days, every syllable memorized, every copy labeled. The patient advocate met me at the front door, her badge clipped high, her eyes sharp with the kind of calm that absorbs panic. "We'll stay within procedure," she said, "and the rest will reveal itself." Joel arrived early, Ruth on his arm, both dressed like Sunday, even though it was Thursday. "Just formality," Joel said, patting my elbow for the audience of clerks. "We have nothing to hide." His charm was a tie he never removed. Ruth carried a folder of family photos, as if sentiment could outvote evidence. We sat at a long oak table in a side room, its blinds tilted against the noon sun. Ivy wasn't there. She was safely at school, but her drawing of a lighthouse waited folded in my bag. I tapped it once before we began. The clerk spread papers across the table, consent forms, foundation ledgers, bank memos, each one stamped with dates that hummed like clocks. My copies matched them but bore my notes in the margins. Not my signature, Joel's are, fun same day, AS canceled IUD. I slid them across like cards in a game I had practiced in silence. Joel leaned back. "She's confused," he said smoothly. "Pregnancy exhaustion." Ruth nodded, clutching the photos. "She's a good mother. Sometimes mothers just imagine things." The advocate cleared her throat. "We're not here to debate feelings. We're here to verify documentation." Her hand rested on the file, as if guarding a flame. Joel's mask flickered when the clerk laid down 2 signatures side by side. Mine from my driver's license renewal, his from a recent mortgage addendum. The RS leaned identical, tall and proud. "Coincidence," Joel muttered, but his voice cracked the way porcelain does before it breaks. Ruth pressed her palm to mine. "Stop this before you regret it," she whispered. Her hand was cold, her nails careful crescents. I pulled free. "I'm already living regret," I said. The clerk circled the timestamp of a consent form dated Sunday, a day the office was closed. Joel's jaw tightened. The advocate leaned in, her voice level. "This needs explaining." Joel laughed too loudly, a sound like glass in a garbage disposal. "She doesn't know what she's saying." He looked at me, eyes narrow. "You wouldn't dare." I opened the folder and placed the printout of his draft email to Elaine on the table. The subject line read, "Keeping Mara aligned." The sound of Joel's fist against oak silenced even Ruth. For 1 second the room froze, like a photograph where no one breathes. Then the clerk picked up the paper with his email draft and held it as though it were radioactive. "This is explicit," she said, eyes flicking to me with both apology and steel. Joel lunged into performance. "It's stress. Everyone knows stress makes men say things. I love my wife, my family, my community." His voice boomed with rehearsed sincerity, but his forehead gleamed with sweat. "We're helping families with our foundation. We're doing God's work." The clerk slid the foundation ledger forward. "Yet the donations trace back to your joint account," she said. "Not external donors. Funds were redistributed to close associates. That's not benevolence. That's misrepresentation." Ruth's face paled, but she clutched the photos tighter, as if family snapshots could erase ink. "You're humiliating us," she hissed. "People will talk. Think of the children." I placed Ivy's lighthouse drawing on the table, its penciled beams stretching across paper. "I am thinking of the children," I said. "They need truth more than they need applause." The advocate looked directly at Joel. "There are potential legal implications here. Forged medical records. Misuse of charitable funds. Interference with consent." Her words were surgical, each one leaving a mark. Joel's mask cracked. "You're siding with her?" "She's weak, confused, led astray." His hand shook as he gestured to me, but the tremor betrayed him. "Your wife is coherent, consistent, and documented," the advocate replied. "You are the one with inconsistencies." Ruth rose suddenly, voice sharp. "Enough. We'll not be part of this circus." She grabbed Joel's arm, but he shook her off, his face twisted between fury and desperation. "Don't you see?" he shouted. "Without me, this family falls apart. Without me, you're nothing." His words rang too loud, reverberating through the thin walls until clerks outside paused their work. I leaned forward, steady now. "Without consent, it isn't family, it's captivity." In captivity ends today. The clerk gathered the evidence into a file. This will be reviewed. Protective measures may be advised. She looked at me and added softly, "You've done the right thing." Joel's shoulders slumped, rage collapsing into something smaller, but no less dangerous. He whispered, "You'll regret this, Mara. You'll regret it every day." I stood, my legs firm as stone. "Maybe," I said, "but at least I'll stand on my own." The protective order came faster than I expected, a piece of paper heavy with invisible weight. The county advocate filed the paperwork, citing forged records and intimidation, and the judge granted temporary measures the same afternoon. Joel's car was ordered away from our driveway, his visits narrowed to supervised hours if he requested them. The silence that followed was louder than his voice had ever been. The community fractured overnight. Half the congregation called me brave, the other half whispered, "Traitor." I overheard women at the grocery store debating whether I was sick, sinful, or saintly. A man at the post office offered to pray with me, eyes flicking to the ring I no longer wore. I learned that reputations are public property in small towns, passed around like casserole dishes. Ruth stopped coming by with pies. Instead, she left a single note folded in my mailbox. "Family survives by silence." I tore it once, then twice, then again until the words were confetti too small to hurt. Ivy helped sweep the pieces into the trash, her face set like stone. "We're not quiet anymore," she said. Practically, life cost more. I had to buy a secondhand laptop, set up new accounts, pay for after-school care while I searched for part-time work. The foundation's funds were frozen, which meant our bank account sagged under bills I hadn't seen in years. I stood at the counter of the utility office explaining late fees, while the clerk nodded with quiet sympathy. Dignity tastes different when it's earned in public. At night the kids asked questions. "Where's Dad? Why can't Grandma visit?" I answered with pieces they could carry without breaking. "Dad needs help. Grandma disagrees with me. We are safe." It felt like trying to build a bridge out of matchsticks, fragile but pointed in the right direction. The hardest part was guilt, a constant undertow. Was I robbing my children of stability by dismantling the structure they knew? Or was I finally building stability by tearing down the false walls? I replayed Joel's threat, "You'll regret this every day," and wondered if regret could coexist with freedom. But when Ivy tucked her siblings in and left the lamp on just long enough to whisper, "Mom, you did it," I realized regret had competition. The unknown number traced back to a prepaid phone, the kind sold at gas stations with scratch cards. The advocate assured me it would be logged, another line in a file growing thicker by the week. Still, the glow of it haunted me, a reminder that control doesn't vanish just because a judge signs a page. I started therapy through a sliding scale clinic one county over, where no one knew Ruth or Elaine. The first session I sat stiff, unsure whether silence was safer than honesty. The therapist asked me to list decisions I had made entirely for myself in the past month. I counted 3. Enrolling Ivy in art club, switching our laundry detergent, choosing a new passcode for my phone. She smiled and said, "That's a beginning." Financial literacy classes followed, sponsored by the community college. I learned about budgets that didn't need envelopes, credit reports, how to rebuild when accounts bore scars. I kept notebooks full of numbers, but this time they were mine, and the tall RS in my handwriting curved exactly the way I chose. Boundaries grew slowly, like seedlings in rough soil. Joel requested visitation, and the judge required it to be supervised at the county center. The children returned with mixed reports, snacks and smiles, but also sermons disguised as bedtime stories. I documented everything, wrote conditions in writing. No religious counseling, no financial questions, no undermining school routines. When Joel pushed, the supervisor intervened, and I breathed easier knowing the burden wasn't only mine. At home, I spoke plainly to the kids. Love doesn't erase harm. Respect means asking, not taking. You have the right to say no. Their eyes widened, and used to hearing those words aloud. Ivy hugged me and whispered, "We're free enough to learn." Claire, the neighbor who kept my documents safe, invited us for Sunday dinners. Around her table we laughed without rehearsing lines, a simple grace I hadn't realized I missed. My children ate lasagna while her dog begged for crusts, and the sound of their laughter stitched something back together in me. One evening, I found the lighthouse drawing taped above Ivy's desk. She had added beams of yellow crayon, spreading farther than before. Underneath she wrote, "Light doesn't ask permission to shine. The appeal hearing is still ahead, a shadow on the calendar, but shadows no longer feel like cages. They are just reminders that light exists." Some nights I lie awake replaying every compromise, every silence, every moment I smiled when I wanted to shout. Regret comes, but softer now, edged with clarity instead of chains. I have 7 children. Each face is a universe I'd cross oceans to protect. Loving them never meant I wanted to be forced into motherhood as a performance. That truth has taken me years to say without choking. Joel used faith and reputation as levers. But what I've learned is that consent is not a luxury. It's oxygen. You only notice its absence when you're gasping. Ivy asked me recently, "Will we be okay?" I told her yes, not because I could guarantee it, but because okay is something we build piece by piece. A safe home. A bedtime routine not interrupted by interrogation. A mother who can sign her own name and know it belongs to her. These are bricks in the foundation of okay. To anyone listening who feels pressure dressed as devotion, or love tangled with control, document what you can. Speak to someone safe. Ask the question no one wants you to ask. What would you risk to reclaim your own body? The answer might terrify you, but silence will starve you. I think often of Dr. Patel's steady eyes, of Claire's heart emoji, of the counselor who asked me to count decisions and smiled at 3. They were lifelines braided together, proving that survival is rarely solitary. You don't need a whole crowd. You just need one person who believes you, then another, then maybe even yourself. Last week, we planted marigolds by the mailbox. The paint on our family name still flakes, but the flowers glow orange in the sun, loud and unashamed. The kids laughed when the dirt stained their knees. Ivy pressed a seed into my hand and said, "Your choice, Mom." I bent down, dug a hole, and planted it. And for the first time in years, the decision was mine alone.